Hello, this is Justine Mara Andersen, and I'm here to teach you about details and depth. This is going to be the first of our lectures, and we're going to talk about basically the Hudson River School paintings. Why are we discussing these? Because these painters were masters of depth. They were masters of clarity about depth. And in looking at these paintings, I think I can show you simple ways to break down depth so that you can see it. And if you can see it, you can do it. Now, the way I break down depth is really quite simple. I try to convert any image I look at into a ViewMaster style image. In other words, I break the image down into layers, clearly defined layers. Now, if you look through a ViewMaster, within those flat layers, they also have depth within each layer. By that, what I mean is, if we look down here at this right along here, this what we would call layer 1 if it were a ViewMaster. Now, this layer 1 is in itself full of depth. We've got the depth of the rock. In fact, the rock itself has three different layers, a rear layer, a middle layer, a foreground layer. And then we have this rock here, and the rolling of this hill, and this rock here. So layer 1 is composed of its own multiple layers. So if you're confused about how to draw something in depth, which a lot of students are, the first thing to do is to break down the layers you're trying to communicate. Over here we would have essentially layer 2. You'll notice that layer 1 overlaps the water. That overlap creates a depth, right? A lot of people would draw a water scene and simply have the river running straight down the middle. You can't have the river running straight down the middle. You have to have these overlaps to communicate that there is depth. Now behind layer 1 and layer 2, we see layer 3, which is right in here and goes up to these trees. Notice how it also overlaps the water at this point right here. This overlapping is a depth cue. So that's layer 3. We come across here, we have layer 4, which comes up through these pine trees as well. So now we viewed 4 layers. This also overlaps. You can see these jagged overlaps are creating a lovely sense of depth. We get back here and we're up to layer 5, in which we go across this here. That's layer 5, and then in layer 6 we have this immense rock right here, which seems to be parallel to this space here, which could also be part of layer 6. Gets a little fuzzy sometimes, to tell you the truth. Layer 7 would be this rock, layer 8 this one, layer 9 this one, layer 10 this one, and then we go in a deep space. And you'll notice here that the clouds are actually flat against the background. They aren't coming at us overhead or receding, which creates a sense of release. It creates a sense of open space beyond the confines of these massive rocks. Moving on to the next image, I think you'll begin to see the layers yourself. Right here we have layer 1, which comes straight across the foreground. Layer 1 overlaps the water once again. These overlaps are fantastic depth cues. So that's layer 1. Moving on to layer 2, it could just be this simple rock here. Layers need not be immense. Layers can sometimes be just simple depth cues like this rock here. So we have layer 2. Layer 3 comes up over this tree and across the land, and the two figures. She overlaps. This person is in red, so they stick up against the green. That also helps to make some distinction of depth. Layer 4, right in here. This rock here. Layer 5, we're coming up across this hill. Layer 6 being this monumental rock right here, which shoves us into the deep space here. Layer 7 is essentially the little bit of space behind that rock. Layer 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then 14 into the sky. So we are essentially projected in this image almost like telescopically straight into the sky right through here. So I think if you look at the next image, see if you can break down the layers themselves before I even speak. This image is a little more subtle and a little more complex, but we're going to talk about the layers within. You have this layer here. We're going to call that layer 1. Notice it's just a lean in from the side. It doesn't have to come all the way across from the bottom. Sometimes a layer can come from overhead or from the sides. So that's layer 1. Layer 2 is this tumble of rocks right here. Layer 3 is this tumble of rocks going along here. Layer 4 is this tumble of rocks, and layer 5 is mixed in here, this tumble of rocks which leads up to the waterfall itself. And you can see right here where the waterfall breaks, comes down, and comes across this tumble of rocks. Layer 6, this here, Notice also the jaggedness here, the jaggedness here. Well-placed jaggedness really helps create layers, creates depth cues. Layer 7, right in here. Layer 8, right here. Layer 9, this little wedge right here is all there is to layer 9. Layer 10, and we break it up with layer 11, the small space. Layer 12 here. Then we come across layer 13 here. Layer 14 is this back wall of waterfall. Layer 15, the narrow strip of river. And then layer 16, and then probably layer 17 here into the deep space of layer 18. Now, if this were a ViewMaster, that would be a lot of layers. I kind of forgot to mention the rainbow down here. It could have also been considered a layer as well. So I think you can see even in an image like this, where the layers are not as clearly placed as boulders, on a cliff scene, there are still clearly distinctive layers. This one gets more interesting because now we aren't just dealing with layers on the lower planes. We aren't just dealing with layers at the ground level. Now our layers are overhead. So suddenly this landscape begins to feel more claustrophobic. It begins to feel more intense because you're now enclosed within the confines of this landscape. Layer 1 is essentially right here, this nice large rock jutting out. Layer 2 right in here, this rock here. Layer 3, layer 4 the lake. Layer 5 is coming right across here, breaking these two bodies of water. Layer 5 comes up through here. Layer 6 is the lake itself. Layer 7 would be the back end of the mountain. Layer 8, we start to get this rainstorm here. Layer 9, this rock across here. Actually, layer 9 would probably be this plume of rock here. Layer 10 would be these rocks. Layer 11 going into deep space. Now, this image has a completely different feel to it because we are trapped within it, which brings up an interesting point about narrative. Our landscapes can help create a sense of what state of mind our characters are experiencing. If we put a character in a landscape in which they're completely enclosed within the layers of depth, that gives them a feeling of being trapped within the landscape. If we give the characters an open background, that gives them a sense of release. So just think about what that can mean when you're metaphorically talking about a character. You put a character in a position or a place where they are uncomfortable, you might want to encase them in layers above, below, and to each side. You want a character to feel like they're in a new horizon and they're going to experience a new world and beyond the new vistas, then you want to look beyond into an open sky beyond, perhaps. So all of this talk about layering, all this talk about landscape does have narrative qualities. Whoa, we're on a really big one here. This one is extremely claustrophobic, mainly because the narrative is about what would essentially be the fall of Rome. Now, the fall of Rome is can be a moral tale to many people. If you look at this, we have layers above, below, to the sides, and above, and essentially all of these layers are tunneling us into the heavens. And this is where this painter, who was probably a fairly devout Christian, would have seen release. Release from Rome would be in the heavens above, in the realm of God, right? So let's talk about the layers in this painting without getting into great depth, because we could dissect this layer itself into its multiple layers. One, two, three, four, being parallel to 5, but I'm not going to get that detailed. But this does bring us back to my initial statement, which is that each layer has layers within it. Again, like the ViewMaster. They would ViewMaster this probably by just cutting this through here, and that would be your first layer, and then these would be all the layers of depth within that first layer. So we're going to call this layer 1. Layer 2 comes up here, and we have this guy here. Notice how this guy here on layer 2 is actually echoing and mirroring parallel movements of the clouds overhead to further trap us in the intensity of this scene. So that's layer 2. Layer 3, well, layer 2 is kind of down here also, but here we have layer 3, which is the boats on fire. Layer 4 is this element right through here, which continues all the way through and also continues that motion into the sky. Layer 5, right back here, and goes all the way across here. Layer 6, right through here. Layer 7 is this sort of extended mass here. Layer 8 comes straight across to these structures. Layer 9 right here. Layer 10 here. This is probably part of layer 10. This is probably part of layer 10. Layer 11 which, the clouds are playing into, and then the deep space of layer 12. I call this telescoping, when our eye is being directed directly to one point through a tunnel rather than into an open space. So we've just talked about how the painter has used these layers and has used the closed-in sky, the telescope effect, to feel that we are trapped in this chaos and the only way out is the heavens. Here's a simple one. I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and see if you can establish where the layers are. This is not something to become obsessive about. This is not something to worry too much about whether you're spotting the layers correctly. It doesn't really matter. Just beginning to see them is significant. This one's also interesting in that once again, it telescopes us into the heavens. So there's a lot of kind of dark, broiling clouds here, a ruin, and then the heavenly light beyond. So once again, this painting definitely communicates a sense of space, a sense of depth, and a narrative, an emotional narrative at the very least. This is another example of having our first layer being overhead and not at the ground level. So we are looking out from within a cave, and there's really no escape from this landscape. We continue to be completely lost in the depths of this cave all the way through the clouds. So essentially, the cave here is mirrored in back here in these clouds, which continues that overhead claustrophobic feeling. Now, I'm not going to break down all the floor layers for you here. I think you can look at this in your own and figure that out. Here we have one in which the layers are very interestingly placed because there is a sense of openness, a sense of relief. Notice how there's a sense of relief here, a sense of relief that does not exist in this painting, or in this painting, or in this painting. You're constantly, completely, claustrophobically trapped in all three of these paintings with only one point of release, the telescopic space in the distance. This one, you have a much more expansive sense of release. Again, we could just say this is layer 1, this is layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, layer 5. We get down here to like layer 6, layer 7, come across layer 8, this field, layer 9, these bit of hills, layer 10, this plain, layer 11, these hills, layer 12 here. But in with all this are these layers on the side. We have a layer on the side and top 1, layer side and top 2, layer side and top 3. I'd say that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then into the open sky above. So we have layers at the ground level, we have layers at the sky level. This is a real beauty, and it's full of lovely, lovely layers. We started off with layer 1, and actually this fellow. Layer 2 would be the rock behind him, which you can't see for that stupid little pause sign there, so we'll just wait a second for it to go away. There you go. You can see layer number 1 being the man or woman. I think that's a man in that case. Number 2 being that bit of rock that has fallen. Layer 3, this right here. Layer 4, to my eyes, is these detailed elements of the pillars here. Layer 5, this parallel ruin going across here. Layer 6 is right through here. Layer 7 comes up through here and includes this building. Layer 8 here. Layer 9 here. Layer 10 here. Layer 11 here. Layer 12 here. Layer 13 here, this plain. Layer 14 is kind of this fine little place here. Layer 15 goes along here. Layer 16 here. And layer 17 is the mountain itself. And this one, once again, leaves you an open sky. So it feels less claustrophobic. It feels more like there's a sense of discovery in this new place, but there's also an open sky beyond. There's a sense of relief built into this painting. And what's so important about recognizing these layers? What's important about recognizing these layers is that once you as an artist can see something, you as an artist can begin to do something. If you can't see it, you can't do it. I highly recommend that at this point, if you have access to a ViewMaster, you look at it. Take some time to look at the layers, then perhaps come back to this lecture and look at this again. Furthermore, in a few moments, if you'd like, you can pull up the demo in which I'm going to do a hands-on demo of two things. First of all, I'm going to break down the layers visually for you with tracing paper. Secondly, I'm going to show you a tracing I did of one of the actual paintings to show you how you can transfer this from full color painting to black and white line work. Once again, I think I'm going to stop here, be quiet, and allow you a moment to figure out where the layers are. Remember, the layers don't have to be large. And remember, the layers don't have to be at the ground level, although in this particular painting, most of them are. This is a great example of the narrative power of landscapes and of layering. I'm not going to break down each one of these layers because I think that's becoming redundant at this point. What I am going to talk about is the fact that these men are explorers. They're off in the new world. They are completely immersed in this landscape, above, below, and to the sides. There is absolutely no open space. They are in this. They are consumed in this adventure. There are the trees above. There are the rocks they're standing on. There are these trees to the side. There are these trees to the side. There's all the stuff below them. They're literally in the middle. They're not even on the ground. They're in the air between the ground and the river, between the trees, and between the sky beyond, and between the trees and the rocks on both sides. This really gives you a feeling of what it's like to explore a landscape, a new landscape, an untamed and wild place. There's no relief, there's no openness to it. You are in the adventure. This one I include because the layers are so absolutely easy to understand. I'm not going to break down each of the layers for you in this case. I think you can see them very clearly. But what I am going to do is point out the brilliant overlapping here, 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 here. These jagged edges are really creating depth. We go from ground to lake, ground to lake, ground to lake. We've got this lovely little island here with water all the way around it. That also creates depth. Look at all the simple depth cues that are here. And then you've got this little road winding back into the distance. This one is very similar to the first image we showed you. And I think that I don't even have to say anything. I think at this point, once again, you can look at this one and immediately see where the layers are. What I am going to say, however, is that unlike the first painting we looked at, where the sky was wide open, in this painting, the layers are here, 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 and here, and keep going back. So we have layers both above and below. And this one is another example of sort of telescoping us to one place in the distance. That's what I mean by telescoping, is that essentially we are spiraling through a tunnel of layers and being directed to one point. Whereas with, say, a painting like this, even though it's small, there is an open space at the back. We aren't being telescoped. This is a panoramic view. So we have a panoramic view. We have telescoping. Here, very similar. Very simple. This is a great one for simple application of the layers. This would be an easy ViewMaster one to cut out. There are maybe 6 layers total. Very, very simple. A little bit of the sky. Again, very, very clear layers. You should begin to see them. Wow, this was fantastic. This is the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. And what we have here is the same layering effect we've been talking about before, and the same telescoping concepts we've been talking about before. But they get very interesting here because here's Adam and Eve being expelled from the Garden of Eden and being thrown into Akron, Ohio. Over here we have the Garden of Eden from which they came. So we have layers of depth showing you the Garden of Eden. But you'll notice that in the Garden of Eden, the sky is open. It's a great moment of symbolism. It's a great metaphor. They had come from this open, warm, lovely place, and now they're trapped in the claustrophobic hell of the material world. So our eyes are being led into this deep space with the open sky, and then telescoped and tunneled into these layers of suffering, now that they have the knowledge of good and evil. So once again, we're dealing with another metaphorical possibility. We have taken both those metaphorical possibilities I've talked about earlier, the open sky and the telescoping effect of leaving you feeling claustrophobic, and used them to great effect to tell the narrative of Adam and Eve. I challenge you to look at other paintings by the Hudson River School and see if you can start spotting these things yourself. This is a great example of open sky, but also we're not telescoping, but the sky is actually overhead like a blanket. Again, panoramic. It's not telescoped, it's a panoramic blanket of sky over a panoramic blanket of ground cover. I hope at this point you've enjoyed the lecture and you can begin to see the kind of things that I'm seeing with my trained eye. If I can pass that along to you, you can begin to develop this. So now what you need to do is go back to your original homework of creating a landscape. And with everything we just talked about, create new landscapes, experiment with these ideas, see what you can do to create an incredible amount of deep space, and see what you can do maybe in other drawings to use the layers, to use the telescoping, to use the wide open space, to create metaphoric possibilities, to begin to create a narrative. Anyway, this is Miss Justine Andersen. Thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again in the next lecture.